They laughed when she sat in the colonel's spot. A woman in grease-stained overalls. A room full of experts, commanders, and engineers who thought she was nobody. But when the system failed, and chaos hit, she touched the controls. And the entire room froze. Who is she? Why did they bury her past? And what did she do next, that made even the highest-ranking officers salute? The hangar buzzed with low chatter, clinking tools, and the distant whir of turbines powering up. Under the harsh glow of flickering fluorescent lights, a figure moved with quiet precision, mopping a slick of oil near the rear exhaust of a grounded Raven 7 combat drone. Elena Rivas, her dark brown hair tucked beneath a stained cap, wore a maintenance uniform 2 sizes too big and boots long overdue for replacement. A grease-smudged cloth peeked out from her back pocket. To most, she was just another base tech. A name on a roster. A pair of hands to wipe, sweep, or tighten bolts. No one noticed the way she moved, calculated, confident, as if the drone was more familiar to her than her own body. A group of young officers passed, laughing loudly. One paused just long enough to look down at her. "That thing's smarter than you, Rivas," he snorted, nodding at the dormant drone. A couple of others chuckled. Elena didn't respond. She simply shifted her grip on the mop, dipped it into the bucket again, and kept cleaning. A faint smile crossed her lips, not bitter, not sarcastic. Just tired. Behind her, 2 engineers debated over a diagnostic printout, completely ignoring her presence despite standing just 3 feet away. They talked about voltage drift, control lag, and the upcoming demo to the high brass. "Reed's gonna blow a fuse if this thing glitches again," one muttered. "Yeah, well, maybe next time they'll let someone who knows what they're doing run the test." Their voices dropped when Colonel Reed Masters entered the hangar, flanked by a cluster of senior officers and visiting defense contractors. Elena didn't look up, but she didn't have to. The sound of his boots, always perfectly polished, echoed louder than the rest. Masters was tall, proud, and carried the weight of someone who had never once questioned his own authority. He made a point of not seeing her as he walked past. That was the unspoken rule. Elena Rivas didn't exist. Once, maybe, she had. Once, her name had been spoken with respect, whispers in classified rooms, test pilot briefings, design labs. But not anymore. Now, she scrubbed floors next to machines she'd once helped fly. A metallic clang startled her from memory. A tool had fallen off a workbench nearby. She bent down to pick it up, handing it wordlessly to the startled mechanic. He took it without thanks and turned away. Elena knelt again, this time near the drone's rear panel, and gently ran her hand over the edge of a side latch. Her fingers lingered for a second too long, like touching a memory no one else could see. "You remember me, don't you?" she whispered, so softly no one could hear. Outside the hangar doors, vehicles lined up. The demonstration was about to begin. Officers polished speeches. Engineers rehearsed protocols. And Elena Rivas, forgotten, dismissed, invisible, was already closer to saving them than they could ever imagine. Inside the base's high-security command dome, the air was heavy with pride and ego. Flags fluttered gently from ceiling-mounted projectors, blueprints lit up floating glass displays, and men with stiff backs and tighter jawlines filled the tiered observation seats like a courtroom awaiting judgment. Colonel Reed Masters stood front and center, arms behind his back, chest puffed like a rooster in full display. His medals gleamed beneath the lights, and his voice cut through the air like a drone blade. "Gentlemen, what you're about to witness will change the future of warfare." Behind him, the live feed from a hovering Raven 7 drone blinked to life. The drone hovered several kilometers away in open airspace, its controls linked wirelessly to the new Command Sync AI, or C-Sync, installed here in the dome. A marvel of modern warfighting tech, if it worked. The audience, composed of Pentagon advisors, NATO representatives, and defense contractors with pens and price tags in their briefcases, leaned forward in anticipation. Elena Rivas stood near the back, wedged between 2 stacked crates of cables and an inactive support console. She hadn't been invited. But no one told her to leave either, so she stayed, blending in like static. She watched the colonel with unreadable eyes. His speech was flawless, of course. Polished, patriotic, and utterly hollow. This isn't just a drone. It's a combat decision-maker. Smarter. Faster. Never hesitates. And best of all, no human error. The room chuckled approvingly. Elena's gaze flicked to the operator console across the room, where a young specialist, sweating in his uniform, tapped commands and loaded the AI sequence. She saw his hesitation. His forced smile. The slight tremble in his fingers. Too fast, she thought. Masters clapped once. Begin the sequence. The drone, hovering peacefully above the test field, began its maneuvers. It rotated, climbed, scanned the synthetic terrain below. The crowd murmured in appreciation as real-time visuals displayed its precision. Observe target acquisition, Masters narrated. Zero lag. Zero guesswork. Elena tilted her head. Something about the response timing was off. A fraction of a second late. The drone was hesitating, microscopically, but she noticed. She leaned forward, unnoticed. Across the room, the operator was biting his lip. And Masters, drunk on praise, pushed harder. Initiate the adaptive evasion protocol. The specialist hesitated, then obeyed. Evasion program, engaged, he said quietly. That's when it started. The Raven 7 stuttered in midair. First, it wobbled, a slight yaw deviation, like a twitch. Then it froze. Mid-maneuver. Hovering above a simulated missile field. It didn't climb. Didn't drop. Just locked in place, as if the AI was holding its breath. Inside the dome, a hush fell. Then murmurs. Then panic. Sir? The system's not responding. Colonel Masters narrowed his eyes. What do you mean not responding? It's locked. We've lost feed from the adaptive loop. Get it back, Masters snapped. The specialist's hands flew over the console, sweat now dripping. A warning flashed red on the holographic display. Command loop failure. AI handoff unsuccessful. Another engineer bolted up from the lower deck. The command sync's caught in a feedback delay, it's rejecting manual override. Well, force it, damn it. Masters barked. The room shifted from polished pride to barely contained chaos. The Raven 7, now frozen above the demo field, began slowly dipping in altitude. The drone's rotors pulsed erratically, like a heartbeat about to flatline. That's a $200 million prototype, someone shouted. An advisor muttered, if that thing drops in front of these foreign observers, we lose the entire contract. Alarms beeped across the console. Systems rebooted, then stalled. Command attempts were met with silence. The AI wasn't just unresponsive, it was fighting back. Locked in its own loop. Elena stood still, eyes locked on the screen. Her breathing shallow. Her hand gripped the side of the crate behind her. It's happening again, she thought. Same drift. Same delay. Same failure signature as Revenant. She knew this code. She knew this glitch. And she knew, if the drone dropped and exploded, everything in its radius would be incinerated. They hadn't cleared the perimeter. Civilian contractors were still in range. Cut the damn power. Masters shouted. Sir, if we kill the power mid-flight, the drone might crash instantly, no stability fallback. Then figure it out. Elena's voice cut through the noise, calm, measured. You're barking at the wrong people. Everyone turned. She stepped forward. Her badge caught the light. Her boots echoed across the floor. She wasn't yelling. She didn't need to. That system's not going to respond to brute force. You're triggering its panic subroutines. The silence was deafening. Masters blinked. And who the hell are you? I helped build its foundation code, she said. before you erased my name from the project." She looked at the console. "Let me try." Elena stepped forward slowly, each step echoing louder than it should have. The chaos in the control room had settled into something worse: paralysis. Panic masked as posturing. Officers whispered, engineers argued, and the drone feed continued blinking red with auto-failure loop detected flashing in pulses. She cleared her throat. "Sir? I might know what's happening." At first, no one responded. Then heads turned. Slowly. Disbelief crept across faces like a virus. Colonel Masters turned around, squinting at her like she was a stain on his boots. "Excuse me? The loop isn't a bug. It's a legacy reaction. If you keep pushing override, the AI will deadlock the whole system." Silence. Then a burst of sharp, mocking laughter from the back. "Wait, is she serious?" one young officer scoffed. "She thinks this is a video game," another snorted. "Get back to your mop, maintenance girl." Someone mimed wiping a floor. A few chuckled nervously. Elena didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. "If you let me in the command seat, I can fix it." That was too much. Laughter now spread through the room like fire through dry grass. Even some of the engineers, trapped in fear but desperate for a scapegoat, shook their heads. "Let you? You're not even cleared for diagnostics," Masters said, venom coating every syllable. Elena reached into her pocket and slowly pulled out a worn clearance card. It shouldn't have existed. Not anymore. But the chip inside still blinked green. "This says otherwise." Masters stepped forward, jaw tight. "You think some outdated pilot credentials give you authority in my command dome?" "No," Elena said, calm. "But the code inside that drone? That does." He froze. And in that second of hesitation, of indecision, of ego rattling under doubt, she moved. Without permission, without ceremony, Elena walked past him and sat in the colonel's chair. The laughter died instantly. Gasps rippled across the room. Some stood in disbelief. Others watched, transfixed, like witnessing a rule being broken no one dared question before. Her fingers hovered over the command interface. It was exactly as she remembered, and somehow worse. The new UI was bloated, cosmetic, and hiding real data beneath flashy overlays. "They buried the failsafes," she murmured. "But they didn't delete them." Her hands danced across the panel, fast, fluid, with eerie confidence. An override window opened. One of the engineers muttered, stunned. "That's not even on our build." "How did she?" "Manual stack access, alpha-level partition," she said aloud. "You built on Revenant's skeleton. That skeleton was mine." Colonel Masters stormed forward. "Get her out of that chair, now!" "Sir, wait," the young specialist whispered. "She's stabilizing it." The red blink on the drone's feed flickered. Then turned yellow. Then green. In the field miles away, the Raven 7 buzzed softly, alive again, steady in the sky. Elena leaned back in the chair. Her voice didn't gloat. It just existed. "Next time, don't teach a system to fly unless you remember who gave it wings." The room was breathless. Elena's hands moved across the control screen with the ease of muscle memory, like she wasn't reading commands but remembering them. Her fingertips danced over the virtual interface, bypassing layers of encryption that the current engineers didn't even know existed. Command root, stack priority, memory bleed override. She murmured like she was speaking to the machine, not to the room. It responded like it remembered her too. One technician leaned forward, brow furrowed. "She's bypassing the AI lockout." Another gasped, pointing to a hidden diagnostics panel unfolding on the screen. "That's a level 6 clearance shell, who even knows that exists?" She didn't stop. With a few keystrokes and a split-second pause, she executed a custom protocol, code strings rolling across the screen like silk unspooling from a loom. The screen lit up green. On the drone feed, the Raven 7 shuddered, then leveled out, its posture correcting, rotors adjusting. The erratic beeping in the control dome silenced. A single notification blinked on the console. Manual override accepted. System stabilized. The operators looked up in disbelief. Gasps filled the dome. No one was laughing anymore. What did she do? One voice whispered. That sequence, how does she know that? Another engineer muttered, wide-eyed. Elena didn't answer. She was focused. Her eyes darted across the screen as she typed in another command, a deep diagnostic sweep. She wasn't satisfied with simply restoring control. She wanted to know why it failed in the first place. Colonel Masters stood frozen, face drained of color. His fists clenched at his sides. This wasn't just a technician guessing her way through a crisis. This was someone who knew the system better than the people who claimed to build it. That protocol, the younger specialist whispered. That wasn't in any of our documentation. Because it was from the Revenant era, said a grizzled engineer from the back, finally stepping forward. His voice cracked slightly. And she was Revenant's top pilot. Before they erased her. Eyes shifted across the room. Elena's screen chimed. Diagnostic complete, sabotage code detected. Her lips parted slightly, breath caught. There's more, she said aloud. Someone implanted a rogue command packet. It was timed to trigger during evasive routines, just like today. A murmur rolled through the room. Sabotage? Internal? Elena turned in the chair to face the silent crowd. For the first time, her voice carried weight, not from volume, but from truth. If this had been a live combat deployment, we'd be looking at a crater and a cover-up. She stood, slowly. Her shadow stretched long across the polished floor. You were seconds away from a catastrophe. And all it took to stop it, was listening to the person you laughed at. She walked away from the command seat. Behind her, the drone hovered peacefully. Obedient. Stable. Not one person dared speak. The room was still as Elena stood over the command terminal, the green stabilization light pulsing faintly on the screen behind her. Most thought it was over, that the crisis had passed. But Elena knew better. Her fingers tapped the console again, not to fly the drone, but to interrogate it. Run a forensic trace on the adaptive response log, focus on the evasion command handoff, she said quietly. The specialist beside her blinked. You think this was intentional? Elena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she brought up a hidden subdirectory, a developer's backdoor, long forgotten, buried beneath 8 layers of interface padding. The screen shifted to lines of code. Tangled among them was a ghost signature, a string of commands that shouldn't exist. Elena's eyes narrowed. There, she whispered. Right before the drone froze. She highlighted a fragment. /execute_kill, if_manual_override equals true. Her breath caught. No, she muttered. This wasn't just a failsafe. This was meant to trigger a detonation if someone tried to take control manually. She zoomed out. The sequence was cleverly disguised to only activate under specific conditions, like today's demo. Had this been in real combat, the Raven 7 would have perceived manual intervention as hostile intent, and triggered its self-destruct mechanism. This isn't a glitch, she said aloud. It's sabotage. A technician stepped forward. That code isn't in the base firmware. Because it was planted after the final build, Elena said, scrolling deeper. Injected directly into the behavior learning loop. Another engineer leaned in to look. You'd need admin keys to write that deep. Elena gave a hard look toward the command balcony, where Colonel Masters stood rigid, watching. Or access to the dev servers. With precise, surgical strokes, Elena typed a set of purge commands. Ghost signature found. Purging adaptive shell. Resetting AI stack. The screen flashed, corrupted line erased. System secure. A quiet murmur spread through the control dome. Relief. Awe. And something else, fear. One older engineer sat back in his chair, stunned. "This isn't just a fix," he said softly. "She just prevented a war crime." Another chimed in, voice shaky. "If this had gone live, if we deployed this in a populated zone, the drone could have turned on civilians. Friendly forces. Anyone who tried to intervene." The implications hit like a shockwave. And in the center of it all stood Elena, grimy uniform, cracked badge, steady hands. The woman they laughed at. The one they ignored. The one who saved them all. But she didn't bask in it. She didn't smirk or gloat. She simply stepped away from the console and looked to the drone feed. Still hovering. Still intact. Still alive. "I buried that code 5 years ago," she murmured to herself. "Someone dug it up for all the wrong reasons." Her eyes rose to Masters. And for the first time, he looked afraid. The control dome buzzed with a new kind of energy, no longer panic, but stunned disbelief. People whispered in corners. Phones lit up with calls. Engineers looked at Elena not like a janitor anymore, but like a ghost returned to life. "Who is she?" a young specialist asked. She knew those codes better than the developers. She called the feedback loop before the crash even started. The truth began to unravel, thread by thread. Someone finally asked the right question, and someone else remembered the name. Elena Rivas. Wait. Lieutenant Elena Rivas? From Project Revenant? A senior engineer, one of the few who had been on the base since its early days, slowly stood up. She was the Revenant project's lead test pilot. Eyes turned toward him. The name hung in the air like smoke. She flew over 30 test sorties with prototype AI. No one else made it past 10. The system crashed again and again, killed 2 pilots in simulation, 1 in live flight. She was the only one who knew how to read the AI's shifts, feel it before it broke. So what happened to her? He looked down. Regret deep in his eyes. She saw something the brass didn't want to admit. She warned them Revenant's decision-making core was flawed, fatally so. She begged for a delay in deployment. Wrote reports. Sent warnings. And, someone asked. They silenced her. Labeled her insubordinate. Said she broke chain of command by bypassing protocol during a live run, just like today. But she saved lives, didn't she? The engineer nodded. Yes. She pulled the emergency override. Landed the drone. Prevented a crash into a training ground. And they dishonorably discharged her for that? They buried her, he said bitterly. Erased her name from Revenant's legacy. Claimed the system worked fine after removing the human error. She disappeared after that. Now she stood here. Not in uniform. Not in rank. But in command. Elena watched the conversation unfold from a distance. She didn't stop it. Didn't correct them. She simply stood with her arms crossed, watching the drone's data stream steady on the screen. Colonel Masters stood stiffly at the edge of the upper tier, jaw clenched. His face betrayed what his posture wouldn't. He knew this day might come. This was never about a mop, Elena said suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, low, but cut like a blade. This was about control. About who gets to speak and who gets silenced. You didn't want a pilot who understood the AI. You wanted one who obeyed it. She turned her eyes directly toward Masters. You erased me because I was right. And today? You almost made the same mistake, again. Gasps. A few of the engineers looked away, ashamed. But Elena didn't want their pity. She just wanted the truth back on record. And now, finally, it was. Colonel Reed Masters stood at the edge of the command deck, eyes burning. His jaw tightened with every word spoken about Elena Rivas. Each whisper, each stare, each realization that the woman they mocked had just saved their lives, it all struck him like a slap to the face. She had taken the seat. She had touched the controls. And worst of all, she had been right. For a man like Masters, that wasn't just unacceptable, it was humiliating. "This ends now," he muttered. He stepped forward, cutting through the murmur of voices like a knife. "Enough," he barked. "This woman is not authorized to access this facility's command systems. She stole entry into a classified terminal and commandeered military assets without permission." He turned toward the security team near the doors. "Detain her." "That's an order." The guards hesitated. Elena didn't flinch. She met his glare with calm precision. "I didn't steal anything, Colonel. I used a clearance you thought was deleted. Funny how truth tends to survive, even when you bury it." Masters growled, losing composure. "You manipulated the system. Violated every chain of command protocol we have. To stop a drone crash you caused," she said flatly. A technician whispered behind her, "She saved the project." But Masters wasn't listening. He had been playing this game for too long, rising through the ranks by polishing his image, rewriting history, and ensuring no one asked questions about Revenant. "She was discharged for insubordination," he declared. "Stripped of her rank and her record. That decision stands." One of the visiting generals, previously quiet, seated among the top brass, narrowed his eyes. "Colonel, when was the last time you reviewed the Revenant debrief files?" Masters turned toward him, masking surprise. "Sir? Because I did. And they're missing something, like original logs, pilot recordings, and field reports." "Who authorized those deletions?" A cold bead of sweat formed at Masters' temple. "That data was unstable. The project team decided it wasn't relevant." "Or was it damaging to you?" Elena asked. Silence. All eyes shifted. The security guards at the entrance still hadn't moved. "She accessed military systems in an unauthorized manner," Masters tried again, his voice rising. "That's treason." "She exposed Sabotage," the younger specialist shot back. "She prevented a war crime. And she fixed a system none of us could even understand." The senior engineer from earlier stepped forward. "You buried her, Colonel. Because her truth would have ended your career." A pause. Then, from the corner of the dome, a secure comms terminal chirped. "Incoming call." "Priority override," the comms tech said. A glowing insignia appeared on the main screen, General Alicia Marquez, High Command. The room snapped to attention. Even Masters went rigid. "Put it through," the comms tech said. The line connected. Elena didn't move. She just stared at the screen as it loaded, waiting for what came next. The tides had turned. And Masters knew it. A soft beep echoed through the dome as the central monitor came alive. The insignia of High Command glowed against the dark glass, a golden eagle crest with 3 stars underneath. Everyone in the room stiffened. "Secure channel opening," the comms officer announced, voice tight with nerves. "Authenticated, General Alicia Marquez, Command South Sector." The display resolved into a video feed. General Marquez sat behind a stark black desk, her uniform crisp, her eyes sharp and unreadable. The kind of commander who didn't waste words, because she didn't need to. She looked directly at the camera. "I've been watching," she said calmly. From the moment the drone locked to the moment it stabilized. Her gaze turned slightly, as if looking past the camera, but everyone in the dome knew who she meant. "Lieutenant Elena Rivas." Gasps rippled through the room. Colonel Masters went pale. Elena remained still, her expression unreadable. "You saved lives today," the general continued. "Military personnel, foreign observers, civilians near the testing zone. You neutralized a threat that my own command staff failed to detect. You executed legacy-level override code on a system built to exclude you. And you exposed sabotage hidden deep in its architecture." Marquez leaned forward. "You should have never been silenced." The words dropped like iron. Colonel Masters opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "I personally reviewed the Project Revenant archive 2 years ago," Marquez said. "I found redactions, Inconsistencies, and reports buried without explanation. Her eyes narrowed. And now I know why. Masters took a trembling breath. General, I acted under protocol. No, Colonel. You acted under fear. You buried the truth to protect your career. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Effective immediately, you are relieved of command. You will be held for internal review pending investigation of negligence, unauthorized data suppression, and obstruction of national defense operations. The guards who once hesitated now moved with certainty. They stepped toward Masters, firm, expressionless. Escort him to holding. Masters didn't resist. Not because he accepted it, but because he was too stunned to fight. As they let him out, Elena turned slightly, meeting his eyes. No anger. No gloating. Just silence. Then General Marquez spoke again, this time softer. Lieutenant Rivas. Elena blinked. It had been years since anyone called her that. The uniform may be gone. But your service never ended. She paused, then said what Elena never expected to hear again. You are hereby fully reinstated. Rank, honors, and record restored. A formal apology will be issued by Central Command. The dome was silent. Even the machines seemed to pause. Elena stood straighter. Not because she needed their approval, but because justice had finally caught up to the truth. Marquez offered a faint, genuine smile. We need people like you. Not just because you can fix drones, but because you don't look away when others do. The screen flickered, then faded to black. But the echo of her words remained. The command dome was quiet now. No alarms. No shouting. No bluster. Just the soft hum of systems returning to idle and the steady green glow of the drone feed on the center screen, stable, safe, secure. Elena stood in front of the console a moment longer, hands resting gently on the edge of the chair where Colonel Masters had once held court. The same chair she had taken without permission, and now willingly gave up. She looked out over the silent room. The engineers. The officers. The observers who had mocked her only an hour ago, now too stunned to speak. Then she stepped back, slowly and deliberately, from the command seat. I didn't come back to take control, she said softly. Her voice wasn't bitter. It wasn't triumphant. It was honest. I came to stop the crash you were all too proud to see coming. No one moved. No one dared to respond. She turned to leave, walking past the same people who had sneered at her uniform, her name, her silence. They didn't laugh now. One by one, the men who once ignored her stood. As she passed, an older engineer brought his hand to his brow, a slow, deliberate salute. Others followed. By the time she reached the exit, half the room was on its feet, saluting in silence. It wasn't about rank anymore. It was about respect. She paused at the threshold and looked back at the screen. The Raven 7 hovered in perfect stillness against a steel-gray sky. What had nearly been a symbol of disaster now remained aloft, steady, dignified, waiting. Finally in the right hands. A low voice beside her broke the quiet. Lieutenant, said the young specialist, the one who had first doubted her. He looked nervous, but his voice was steady. What you did today, it changed everything. She gave him a small smile. No. It reminded them of what they forgot. What's that? Elena looked past him, through the dome's wide viewport, toward the distant flight field glowing in the evening light. That machines don't save us. People do. With that, she stepped through the door and disappeared into the hallway beyond. She didn't stay for the press. Or the promotion ceremony. Or the headlines. She'd had enough of chairs. Enough of podiums. Her work was done. And somewhere, miles above the clouds, a new drone prototype flew a perfect arc through the sky, powered by code she once wrote, and a warning they could no longer ignore. The woman they erased had left her mark. And this time, they wouldn't forget. If this story moved you, share it. There's someone out there who needs to remember what they're capable of. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the strength hiding in silence.